Hello and welcome. Welcome back to Plainsong Farm's Growing Connections series. I'm Nuria Love Parrish with Plainsong Farm. Farm is a living laboratory, nonprofit educational farm. Our mission is to cultivate connections between people, places, and God by making a place that nurtures belonging and the radical renewal of God's world. This place mostly exists on the 12 acres north of Grand Rapids, Michigan. That's our geographic home, but it also exists online. A portion of our work is co-creating a more resilient and equitable food system with partners that are both local and national. And our Growing Connections online Lunch and Learn series exists to grow connections between Christian faith practice, health for people and for planet, and that equity and resilience in the food system. And it's sponsored in part by a grant from the Episcopal Church's Becoming Beloved Community initiative. Today, we're excited to introduce one of Plainsong Farm's newest local partners in our work towards resilience and equity, the Community Food Club. As a nonprofit ourselves, this past year, we made the decision to switch away from selling food to individuals through a community-supported agriculture model. We knew there were other excellent CSA farms in our region, and we wanted to dedicate our product toward greater health equity in our community. That's in accordance with our core values. But we needed partners to bring that to life. And getting connected to the Community Food Club as one of our newest partners, along with North Kent Connect and Grand Rapids Community College, who have been longstanding partners in our food distribution. As I said, getting connected with the Community Food Club was a huge step for us because they serve the entire county and they do it with an innovative and dignified approach to food security. So I'm really excited that I'm joined today by AJ Fossel, who's the Executive Director at the Community Food Club. AJ is going to take us all on a virtual tour, and I believe there might even be some Plainsong Farm folks there because they're actually volunteering there today. AJ is going to explain the model that is used at the Community Food Club and how it works, and we're also going to take any questions that you might have. AJ, thank you so much for being with us today.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Nuria. So everybody, welcome to the Food Club. We will be taking a tour in just a second, but before we get started, I wanted to explain our model and how it works. So we really are a nonprofit grocery store located here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But as Nuria said, we do serve all of Kent County. Our members pay a monthly fee to shop with us. And it's a sliding fee between $11 and $15, but most of our members pay $13. So if you want to think about what $13 would get you at the food club as we walk on through, just keep that in mind. Once our members pay that monthly fee, they get points to shop with. And points work like currency in our store. And it doesn't matter what fee a member pays. If you're a household of one, you get 60 points. All the way up to 170 points if you're 8 or more. And our members can use their points any way that they want to. We really are here just to be a grocery store space for folks. So there's no charts, there's no timeline on how you have to spend your points. Really simple. We've got some really great outcomes in terms of people becoming more food secure, financially secure, and healthy, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Oh, how the points work. The healthier the food is, the lower in points it's going to be. I'll show you that on the floor in just a second. A bit about our history. We've been here for 6 years now. Our birthday's in February, so it'll be a big old 7. We were started by 7 different nonprofits who came together in Kent County and said, we really want to try something new. We want to try something where folks have more autonomy, where they have more dignity and choice in their food selection. So we've been incredibly grateful for this journey and for our partners along the way, and are so glad to add Plainsong to that list. So without further ado, because I'm sure you're just really excited to see the space, I'm going to switch over. So give me just a second. Okay. You guys got me now? So, stepping out onto our floor. Welcome to the Food Club, you guys. Can everybody hear me okay?
we'll just say yes. All right. So, as you can see, these are our beautiful sliding glass stores. We've really thought through the experience of everything at the food club. You are now standing in the Health Hub Centro Sano, which is a new section in our store. We're focused on fighting chronic diseases and dietary needs through our food. So this is a very, very typical day at the food club. Fruits and vegetables are 1 point a piece. So all of this beautiful produce, 1 point. Over 57% of what leaves the food club is a fruit or a vegetable. Well, look at, here's a Plain Song Farm folk. I'm going to say hi. I told Nuri I was just going to throw them under the bus. So, welcome. As I mentioned, we are working in the Health Hub Centro Sano. We talked a lot to our members. They really influence everything that we do. They told us they need things like gluten-free spaghetti, and they need things that are like lactose-free, and foods that fight diabetes and heart disease. So we're stocking those, and we're working hard to make sure we have all the selections that they need. At the food club, consistency is really, really important. So you're always going to find at least 2 fresh fruits and 2 fresh veggies, hopefully more. You're going to find eggs and milk, almond milk, and then frozen meat. Those are the items that we've committed to stocking every day. So I'll show you our beautiful freezers. Oddly enough, one of our number 1 requested items that we've found is fish. So we always stock fish for folks. Our members really need that consistency because we are serving all of Kent County. So some people are coming from Rockford. They want to make sure they can get their 2 gallons of milk. I'm going to show you my very favorite part of the food club, which is our back room. It's not the prettiest, that's fair. But when you're serving over 780 households a month, it's a lot of food and you need a lot of space. So our monthly membership fee, that $13 that members pay, on average, they're getting at least a week's worth of food, somewhere in the ballpark of $115 for their $13 investment. So we really are firm believers that food is a financial tool. And we're really excited to walk in an economic security journey with a lot of our folks. We've had members who have said they've bought a car because of the food club and have really been able to obtain some of their financial goals. So our bread section, you just got to see the snack section. And then here is really and truly, another Plain Song person, is the heart of the food club. It's our checkout lane. So we rely really heavily on volunteers to help make the magic happen at the food club. We're only a staff of 7. And again, there's 2,500 people a month coming through our doors. So we need all the help that we can get. So hi, Mary. Sorry. So we have a working checkout lane. That grocery store experience is so important that if anybody else wants to replicate a food club, you're going to have to put that into our store. So that is the food club as a nutshell. This is Heather. She works with us. Also, fun fact, bananas are the number 1 selling item at a grocery store, also the number 1 selling item at the food club. So I'm going to come on back to my office really quickly so we can continue the conversation.
All right. So that's the food club in a nutshell. So Nuria, I am going to turn it back over to you to continue the conversation.
I just am so excited to see it through the lens of the phone is a little bit different from when I was there in person. But the experience was definitely captured that it's a grocery store experience for people who are coming. It looks like a grocery store. It feels like a grocery store. And it acts like a grocery store where you come in, you have what you need to make the purchases that you want, and then you have the freedom to choose what you're going to choose from a plethora of possibilities that include a lot of the same options that you would find at a grocery store. I really, I was so struck by the difference between the community food club and some of my own experiences working in food pantry or working with folks who are running food, like a food pantry model. And I know you have been part of food pantry experience in the past, but I have to tell a story about the contrast that I saw between what's at the community food club and what is more of a normative pantry experience. I'm sorry about my glasses; they're giving us glare. When I was serving a church that had a pantry, I once watched as somebody who was a member of the church needed to get food from the pantry. And so I, made sure that the person who was a member of the church needing food from the pantry was connected to the member of the church who was in charge of managing the pantry. And because I cared about both of these people, I followed along as they then both went to the pantry. And then I watched as the person who managed the pantry walked the person who needed food around to every shelf and said, you can take this many from this shelf, and you can take this many from this shelf, and you can take this many from this shelf. And which I had not seen someone shop a pantry before that moment. And in that moment, I just remember looking at the situation and going, this just does not feel like the gospel to me. And I couldn't, when I stepped back and reflected on it, the experience, I mean, the person who was managing the pantry, they did that because that's how they were trained to manage a pantry. That's a very normative experience for people who have, on both sides of that equation. The person managing the pantry is a volunteer doing the best they can imagine doing, given the constraints in the model that they inherit. And the person receiving the food, obviously, is somebody that is coming there looking for food. But it just struck me as a very limited, like it put both of them in roles that were not, neither one of those roles had dignity. It isn't a very dignified experience to accompany someone and like micromanage how much they can take. And it really isn't a dignified experience to be told, you may pick 3 of this. You do that to a child, but you don't do that to an adult. And so when we were trying to understand how could we expand our work at Plainsong Farm and have a greater impact on equity in our community, and somebody told me about the community food club, and I came down to visit you, and I was just like, oh, this is completely different. This is the kind of food experience that is much more like what I would have when I, as somebody who has the agency of dollars in my pocket to purchase my food, I'm going to go to a grocery store. And this gives the similar experience to someone who may not have those dollars in their pocket at this present time, but they're going to be going to basically a grocery store experience.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in, Nuri, if that's cool. So at the food club, our philosophy is really that food security is a big pie, right? And we're not, we are a piece of that pie. We need so many different players like Plainsong to help us grow the food, but also that emergency assistance, and to be really frank, we're not an emergency relief kind of charitable food program. It doesn't work for everybody, and we know that. But one of the things that I think resonates so strongly with me is when you add in that fee, it changes and it moves people. So we don't have clients at the food club, we have customers. And that is a really big thing. In fact, we talk about it all the time as staff and volunteers, that the customer experience needs to be the best here at the food club, because people are cliented all day to death and that we work with. And, there's a lot of times that people feel like numbers and they feel like just a cog in the wheel, right? And so we really work hard to know people's names and to just share life with one another. And again, I'm like, my whole life's work will be food, because for me, it's the great equalizer. Like, we all need it. And so it's where community can really happen. And that's where I think it's such a privilege to be able to be in this space and to do this work. Our members are amazing, you guys. They are the most wonderful people that do the most amazing thing with food. And part of how we know that is we're really committed to having their voice be a piece of everything that we do. And I didn't really get into it on the tour, but I'll jump in a little bit now. From day one, Food Club members, which are our program participants, have always been at the table. So a quarter of our board has always been and will always be Food Club members. We work really hard, staff and volunteers, to get anecdotal information, again, just by sharing life with one another and like just chatting with members. During when COVID first hit, we did like wellness checks, and we called people and we're like, what do you need? How can we help? What foods do you want to see stocked on the shelves? You know, and that's part of how that Health Hub Centro Sano was formed, because we were hearing from people like, I have these chronic health needs. I don't know if you know this. It's really expensive to eat a diabetic friendly diet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really expensive if you're lactose free or gluten free, right? So those are all the ways that like they're small but yet so important that we're listening to our folks. And part of what I loved about our conversation with Plainsong was the first thing out of your mouth, Mary, was like, we want to grow culturally appropriate food. And I was like, girlfriend, we are going to partner together, you know, because for so long, so many people have been in a space of like, you have to eat this way because you're in this socioeconomic status. And that doesn't have to be the case, right? So, you know, we're really committed, again, to listening and to understanding that food's a cultural experience and that everybody should be able to eat the way they want to, right?
Absolutely.
One of my favorite things is when a parent brings their children into the food club. And I'm a mom of young kids, and like fruits and veggies are, first of all, hard enough to get down any child, right? But when you're put into this box of I can afford this or I can't afford this, it makes it even harder. And so I have parents that come in and say, I bring my kids here because they get to pick out their fruits and their vegetables. The children have their own autonomy too, right? So again, it's like all of these things that I had never actually really thought of before I started working at the food club, but now it's really impactful to people's food journeys. And it's so that's just like really kind of like our philosophy and the lessons that we've learned throughout our short 7 years, you know, in the community. So
I love your membership approach because we are all members of one another in a society. And the pandemic has not taught us that. I don't know what it, you know, there have to be some lessons of wisdom that we can wring out of this experience that has been so devastating for us and for so many. And when you see one another as members of community, it's just a different relationship. One of the other things that I really appreciated about the food club is that you do serve the entire county. Another one of my experiences from my life when I was serving congregations was having a member of our church come and say, I need healthy food for my daughter that I can't find at my local pantry and I can't afford. And that was the only pantry that she was able to access. This is before you guys opened, because of the neighborhood boundaries that were put in place, you know, at the beginning of when Kent County was organizing our pantries. And we ended up getting her connected with the food pantry that was local to the church, which was in a different neighborhood than her, you know, local food pantry, even though we were her local church. But those experiences stuck with me and made me say, there's got to be, you know, I don't know whether it's a better way to do this or something different added to the landscape. I think you made a really good point that, you know, there's emergency food and that's needed. And then there's the community food club and you're not exactly in that same space. And at Plainsong Farm, you know, we serve emergency food providers. We grow for you know, you're not the only partner we grow for, but having multiple ways that food security is layered in our community is really essential. And the fact that the geography isn't a consideration for you, although I guess beyond Kent County, you're not quite there yet. But am I right that this model is going past Greater Grand Rapids? Tell me some more about how that's working.
Absolutely. So we're really excited. We have 2 food club partners. There's one in Ludington, Michigan, which has been open for going on 4 years now. And then there's one in Holland, Michigan that actually just opened up in October. So if any of you out there are in a different community and are interested in partnering, let me know, because you guys, this model is just too good not to share. And so we've been working really hard at the Grand Rapids Food Club of getting a replication kit in place and doing all of those things because, well, I am like horribly ambitious and also incredibly naive. And so I've just set a goal of being statewide in 3 years and national in 10. So we would love to see more food clubs around because it's a really efficient and effective model too. So one of the things that I didn't mention on the tour is that we do work with a combination of both donated and purchased product, right? So maybe a shocker, but bananas don't grow in Michigan. And if you want to have the #1 selling thing in a grocery store, you might have to purchase that. So we work with a local wholesaler to kind of get us some of those goods. But for our households, it costs us about $75 a month to get them at least $115 worth of product. And it's often more than that. I just never want to lie to anybody. So that's a conservative estimate. So for you business folks out there, this is really a great return on an investment. And so that's just part of why we were really interested in like spreading our growth and spreading our reach. We work with a lot of reclaimed food, so food that would be going into a landfill. All those different pieces really kind of make us this like social justice like hub of food. You know, kind of all the different ways of social justice meeting the needs of a community. So that's just some of the ways that we make it work and why we think we should be national. So if anybody wants to help me get there, I heard there was somebody from Colorado on here. I'm willing to talk to you. So
I love that self-descriptor of what was it, like wildly ambitious and incredibly naive, or maybe it was I completely resonate with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the more that I get into it, I'm like, oh, this might be a little bit more challenging to spread nationally, but it's good, and the timing is right, everybody. I mean, we've not, the food world has been pretty consistent in how we distribute food for like 50 plus years, and the time is now. The time is now to like think about different ways to get good, healthy food to people in our communities. So we're just taking every opportunity that comes our way and just sharing our experiences and the lessons that we've learned. So we're really excited about it.
I should say we have a couple questions in the chat, and I hope that you will, as you're watching, add your questions to the chat, because I'm going to be getting to those as soon as I ask this next question, which is a follow-up from what you just said, AJ. Tell me more about this replication kit.
Oh my goodness. So it's in partnership with the Michigan Health Endowment. We worked with a marketing and PR firm, a communications firm really, to kind of help get all of the really 20,000 foot questions answered if you wanted to open a food club. So we have a media kit, we have an operations guide, because this is a business. Like, you really are running a grocery store, so you really need to have that kind of like basic understanding. We partner with grocers here in town. They're on our board because, again, shocker, I did not go into nonprofits to run a grocery store, and here I am. But then we also have some member language guides as well. So really the different pieces of what you would need to open up a food club, we now have those. And so we're really willing to work. Our board has committed to this replication concept, so we're willing to work with other communities. And our philosophy is just as we approach members. So like, Nuria, you and I probably eat differently, right? Like, you know what your family needs. I know what my family needs to be successful, right? That's kind of how we approach our members and how they spend their points. We will do that with communities as well. I know what works in Kent County. I certainly don't know what works in Colorado or other places. So it's really about how do we work together to form the best fit for those communities that we're serving.
Wonderful. Well, let me go to some of these questions that have come up in the chat. One of them is, how do we get the kit? From someone who is a friend of mine in South Carolina. So,
shucks. I would love to go to South Carolina in the winter, so we'll just chat then. No, I'm just kidding. You can email me. Nuria can share my contact information. Or my email. That's probably the easiest first step, and we can start having conversations and go from there.
And if you registered for this on the Plainsong Farm website, I'll share AJ's contact information when we share the recording with you afterwards. And if you did not register, but you would like that, if you're watching on Facebook, send Plainsong Farm a direct message. Let us know what your email is, and we'll add you to that list. If you're watching on YouTube, email hello@plainsongfarm.com, and we'll add you to that list. Let me go back to the chat. We have a question about how points are valued with fish and dairy and meat.
So it's all a little different. So we have over 30 categories that we put our food into to try to get like maximum flexibility for folks. I will say milk and meat are the most expensive in our store. That's 6 points. Now we recognize that those are healthy, but that's part of like our cost too, because we do purchase a lot of that product. And then eggs are 3 and cheese is 4, and the fruits and veggies are 1. So that's just kind of a, I feel like you would get a pretty good lay of the land just knowing those food categories.
And for membership, if I'm right, one of the qualifications for membership is you need to be at 200% of the federal poverty level or below. So there's a member intake process, I would imagine.
Yes. Yep. People to be able to register for the program can come and stop by and see us directly, or we've got some partners that'll do some electronic referrals. The registration process takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you can be shopping the same day. We do that 200% of the federal poverty level. Just for some context, a family of 4, you'd have to make $53,000 or less to be able to qualify. And we did that intentionally because we do want those households that are perhaps one emergency away from needing food assistance to be able to shop with us, to that ALICE population, that asset limited, income constrained, employed, however you want to call that. So everybody's able to come and shop that if they meet that requirement. The other thing I didn't mention is where we're located. We're very near the Latinx community in Grand Rapids, so half of our folks, Spanish is their primary language. So if you're working in our community and want to send people our way, we always have a bilingual English and Spanish speaker working every day that we're open. And we are open 6 days a week, 10 to 5 Monday through Friday, and then 10 to 2 on Saturday. I share that because we have found having extended hours and that consistency is really important, particularly when you're trying to reach the ALICE population. We really had to have some Saturday hours. And we see there's a whole different crew that comes in and shops on Saturdays. So those are kind of some of the things that we value at the Food Club for this model.
You are the executive director since it started, am I right?
No, so I came in 3 years into the program. So I've been here for 4 years.
Okay. All right. All right. Let me get to somebody else. I keep having questions myself. I have a question. Are you able to use rescued Feeding America food?
Absolutely. Feeding America is one of our founding partners, and we're actually one of the largest agencies that Feeding America West Michigan supports. So we love Feeding America. We love that model. They're great, great partners.
And I have another question. How many members could you serve at the current level of funding that you have?
We could serve about 1,000 households. So we have some room for growth. And one of the ways that we would love to grow is in that ALICE population. So, another word for that is working poor, just to throw it out there. But so if anybody has connections and ways that we can get better known in those communities, we would love to do that.
Wonderful. Okay, I have a couple more that have come in. How did you arrive at your location? Reaching folks that don't have access to transportation is always an issue, and I'm wondering how the location was part of the decision-making process 7 years ago when it began.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, guys, I love this part of the Food Club. So for those of you in Kent County, we're located on Division and Hall in Home Repair Services building in 49507, which is a zip code that is pretty infamous for being food desert or a food swamp, if you want to call it that, because there are fast food and that kind of options for folks. But one of our founding partners is Home Repair Services, who's our landlord. They had a retail space that had recently closed down. They used to sell like donated housing. It's kind of like a Habitat for Humanity restore. So when the recession hit in '08, they had this empty space they needed filled. And turns out it's just perfect for a grocery store. So we didn't have to do like a whole lot of remodeling. That layout was already there. And what we love so much about Home Repair Services is that they were our fiduciary and our employer of record for 3 years while we did a pilot. So much so they altered their mission statement because they recognized that their families, their households could be strengthened if they had access to food. So it's a really beautiful like collaboration that someday we'll write down and just, share with folks that are like geeks like me that like to read about that kind of thing. But yes, so we are on a bus line. Transportation is still a huge issue. I will say that that's one of the things that we hear often is when people can't get to us. It's that's a big need, but it definitely is. We're in a part of town that we need to be in.
And what I remember when I came to visit was you shared that there were folks who were driving from the north part of Kent County to be able to come.
Absolutely. Yep. So we do see folks from Rockford, the Kent County side of Door. Don't know how that works out, but they come because again, they're seeing this is a really good investment, and because of the flexibility of our programming, because this is not like a one time. You don't have to just shop one time. You can shop every day until your points are gone. But for some of those folks who come from far away, they do a one-stop shop, and they load up, and then we see them next month. But for a lot of our folks, they might come a couple of times a week, and that's where the community really happens, right? Because we just get to know people. But yeah, we try to think through all the different ways that we can be so accessible, break down every barrier that we come across, because I don't know about you, but I think we all have enough barriers these days, right?
Yeah, definitely. We have a couple financial questions. One of them is, how is the Community Food Club financed?
Oh, I love to talk about funding. So we are very, very heavily grant funded. I will say that. So there's been some really key community partners that have come alongside us almost from day one, including like Spectrum Health Healthier Communities, Kent County Senior Millage, United Way, family foundations, all of those things. But then we are working really hard to increase our individual donations. So if you're interested, you can always go to our website. My communications and development coordinator would be so happy that I mentioned that, and see different ways that you can give, but also how you can volunteer. Because like I said, we rely on over 600 volunteer hours every month to make this club happen. So we love to have people come in and to volunteer their time as well. It's really important.
Well, and it was exciting to me. I swear we did not plan this, but Plainsong, now that our growing season, we're still producing lettuce and some crops that can be under row cover, but it's not anywhere near as busy as it is during the main part of the season. And so the young adult fellows that are part of our residential program, that's cultivating leadership for a more equitable, resilient, faithful tomorrow. I think we saw 3 of them as you were doing the tour. So that's wonderful for them to be able to have the experience, not just growing the food, but also then going all the way to seeing the end user of how does this food actually get out into the community.
Absolutely.
So thank you for taking them as volunteers. They're volunteering in our program, and we're so grateful for them. If anybody knows a young adult who's interested in doing a year of service learning, my program director would be excited for me to say this. Please check out Plainsong Farms program for 21 to 30-year-olds that starts next August. Here, let me get to that next financial question. What are the wages and benefits for your paid employees?
Super great question. Everybody is paid at or higher for the standard living wage in Kent County. So we're at or above $15 an hour. We take it really seriously because you know what? The Food Club is in the business of eliminating poverty, not creating it. And so thank you for asking that question, because again, it's something I'm really passionate about. We have the full benefits package. We really are serious about retaining these amazing team that we've been able to cultivate. So we run wage benefit analysis and do all the comparisons and a credit to our funders, because when I say that to them, they immediately get it and they understand. And that's where I'm so grateful. And I think some of the tides are turning in terms of fundraising, because people understand, like, gosh, I really should pay people well to run this kind of program and do this kind of work. So hopefully that answered that question.
I think so. It is, as somebody that fundraises for a nonprofit, and I know, you have to too, it is so challenging to just recognize the paying people anything less than a living wage is just not, it's counterproductive when you're working in, if you're trying to do justice work. My theory is that, like, okay, this is my problem. Like, if we are not going to be able to provide people a living wage, then we should not be able to have employees. Now, I mean, at Plainsong, we're very grateful. We have folks that are doing a year of service learning with us. And this year is the first year that has been the case, that they've been with us through this season. And it's been just transformative for us, but we're also hoping to be transformative for them. So there's, education that's like intentional, designed, programmed, planned for the young adults that participate with us. And yeah, anybody that is interested will have more information about that. And I think Anna, who's one of our fellows, put that in the chat on the Facebook side. So check that out. We also have a question. What are one or two of your challenges or opportunities that you plan to address in the coming year?
Great question. So I would say we have two focus points for 2022. And one we already touched on a little bit is working with the ALICE population. So, what I hope you always find in me as a leader is just authentic and honesty. And so we are not serving the amount of people that we served pre-COVID. And so, as I mentioned, we've got room to serve more. And we really think part of that is the SNAP benefit increase, which we certainly celebrate. Anytime somebody can go to a retail grocery store, that's a win, right? That's a win in food security, and we want to celebrate that. So we are working really hard to just let people that fall into the ALICE population know that we're here and we're available to them, because we think the big thing is people just don't think they would qualify for our program. So we're working on that, but those numbers certainly are a challenge. And then the other focal point for us is really our equity work. So we've really been, I would say, seriously investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion since the beginning of 2021. So we finally got our grocery store up and running, and we know really how to make that fly and how to make that work. And so now it's time to make sure that we're providing the best possible experience for every single person that walks through our door. So we formed a DEI committee, and we're taking a look at who's shopping in our store. What is the composition of our neighborhoods around us? Do we look the same as they do? And so, we've got some pretty, I would say, hefty lists coming in terms of how do we ensure that our staffing looks like our community, and how do we make our our fundraising pieces speak to all people. So it's kind of every different facet of the food club is really, we're taking a look at that. So that's good work, but it's hard work, folks. So that, I would say, are some of our biggest things. And then our other biggest challenge, I think, is going to be food procurement. So it's a crazy time in supply chain, as we all know, that our vendors and some of the people that we get food donated from are seeing a 10% spike in food costs. So we monitor that and we watch that really closely. So that'll be something for us, just to make sure we can still get the best, healthiest food to people in this crazy time.
For 20 years, I've been living in Kent County and trying to talk about regional food systems. And, there's never going to be bananas that are grown here, but it's interesting. I mean, having the community food club be part of the landscape now, it's interesting just to see how you wrestle with some of the same issues that a grocer would wrestle with, because we have this national and international food supply chain. When we have a national and international food supply chain, there's a longer chain, then that means there's the opportunity for more issues. And one of the focus areas that I am trying to wrap my brain around at Plainsong Farm is how do we grow for climate resilience? How do we grow for fostering food sovereignty in West Michigan, since we have a really diverse food economy here? But that's not a quick. There's no quick answers in that question, because this food system we have has been, developed over decades, and it didn't develop with an eye to climate resilience. Okay. We do have another question in the chat, which is, what if someone comes to you that cannot afford the $13?
This is a hefty one. So we do have some partners that have come alongside us in the past to support that membership fee. So when somebody comes, we say, reach out to them. But for the most part, we work really hard with our members for them to understand that it's really important that they pay the fee. Because again, this is that participatory program. And so if somebody else is paying for the fee, it just doesn't have quite the same feeling of when you're paying and you're putting food on the table for your household or your family. So we do have some options for people, but we really strongly encourage folks to save or to think about us, for the next month, once their budgeting, is kind of under control. And our members are really smart, strong people. So often they can figure out, a way to get that fee for the program.
Isn't it one of my landmark moments before Plainsong Farm existed was going out to a peach tree that's not there anymore because it had a bad experience with the storm, and picking peaches and going, all of the things about money and food are things that human beings have laid on top of this relationship between people and the rest of creation. It just was just such a revelatory moment for me. And there's so many choices that we make related to food and to money, as a society with an economy, and also as individuals. I'm not saying I have any more insight into how that works based on that experience with the peach tree, but I think my only insight is, wow, we made this all up. Which means we must be able to make it different somehow. So thank you for that question. I have another question. Please keep them coming. We have another about 15 minutes. So folks that are watching on YouTube or Facebook, I've run out of questions from the chat. So I'm making my own, but please add yours and I'll come right back to them. My question is about this replication kit. So you can tell where I'm going with all of this. Is it presumed that people will create their own independent entities that are separate from the food club? They'll create their own versions of the model, or is there any world where you're thinking about extending this model to different locations under the umbrella of the entity that you serve?
So our approach right now is really a food club network, which is similar to how Feeding America operates, where every food club is an independent, nonprofit, and we come together and share just best practices, food procurement, buying in bulk together, that kind of thing, at least for right now. So I'm not going to say that the Grand Rapids Food Club wouldn't open another location or kind of expand. We're just not at that point where we're ready to do that right, today. But if the need arises, and we're happy to talk it through. I'll talk through anything with anybody, just to make sure that we're doing the best job we can. So, but we really, when we talk about extending into different communities, there are always community partners that better know the needs of their community and their members, and that's part of our philosophy. Now, any replication partners, like Community Action House in Holland and those groups, we do ask that they sign an MOU that just says you'll follow our values, and hopefully understand the culture that we're trying to achieve and that kind of thing. But it's really, it's very, very simple and basic. Like, you should have a checkout lane, and your grocery store should be clean, and all of those things. You can't charge members exorbitant fees. That's not what we're here for. So just to kind of outline the basics. That's for right now. That's where we're headed. So.
Very, very interesting. All right, I'm going to keep going back with my own questions. So if you are, what would you say are the growing edges? You kind of talked about this earlier in your in response to what the challenges were. So in terms of the organization's growing edges, as one ED to another, I'm curious about, like, what have your growing edges been living into this role? How has this role changed and shaped you and your work in the community?
I think that, and I'm horribly biased, but I think that this has touched every piece of my life, every personal, private, everything. It's funny when you look back at your journey, and my journey's always involved food. So I grew up, my parents ran restaurants, and so I've always been in the food space. But here, it's just a really beautiful way to live community with one another, right? And so I serve people here that when I ran a food pantry, and again, I am so grateful for food pantries and emergency charitable response. I really want that to be clear, because we can't do this work alone. We can't do it in a silo. But at the pantry, I now serve people at the food club that I serve at the pantry, and our community experience is just a little bit different, because they're looking me in the eye, and we're really sharing life. And I believe that that's because of that, that it all goes back to the fee. It goes back to people paying and participating. And I love that every day I get to come and be with people whose walks of life are very different from my own, and that I think has really taught and shaped me. The members have changed me because they're amazing and they're beautiful, and we just can share life in a different way. And as I start my own very simple equity walk, because I'm by no means an equity DEI expert of anything, this has been a very great place to start to do that and to examine just why people's walks are so different from my own. It's been humbling, and it's been beautiful. And so I'm just grateful that I get to come and do a job that I deeply love, every single day, with people who equally love it. So it's I don't know, it's just been radical. It's been radical in how I approach life. So I'm always really, really grateful to our community and to our members, and to the board of directors, gosh, for even just taking a chance on on me. So.
It's funny when I think about the different ways that food connects us. Food and power are two things that we don't always talk about as going together. But I think one of what stood out to me that was troubling to me about the pantry shopping method was the power differential that was embodied there. And what I appreciate about the community food club model is there's still power in this model. There's always power when it comes to economic difference and food access. And I think that's the challenge, is being mindful about it and honest about it and trying to wrestle with it openly. But it's a different experience, I think, for the person who is participating in the community food club. I don't know that I'm articulating that very well. I'll go back to a question in the chat, which is, do your 3 stores in Grand Rapids, Holland, and Ludington, do they each have their own board? And I think those aren't your stores. Am I right?
No, so they're all separate nonprofit organizations that run them, and they do all have their own governing bodies, and we don't answer to one another. Ludington could go off and do something different. It would violate our MOU, and we'd have to talk about name changes and that kind of thing, but they could do that. And again, that was really intentional in how we set that up, because I got enough work in Grand Rapids. I don't need another food club in Ludington or in Holland, guys. But what I will say about that is the interesting thing. So Ludington's very rural. They are finding this almost exactly the same outcomes that we are. So we track, are our members more food secure? So are they like not skipping meals? Are they more financially secure? Are they better able to meet their basic needs? And are they healthy? And regardless, because now we have 4 years of data from Ludington, we're seeing the same things, which all of that again leads back to that replication kit and like just kind of that we need to go for this because certainly Ludington has different challenges than the Grand Rapids Food Club does, but we're still meeting the needs of folks in the same way. And that's really, I think that's really exciting. It's certainly exciting for a data geek like me. But, you know, but that partnership, I've learned so much about the rural needs, and that is a completely different game than what I face here in in the urban jungle. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So yes, so we're all separate. We do have our own governing boards, but we do touch base with each other. We try really hard for quarterly. The Grand Rapids Food Club will train staff if that's something that people need. You know, we've had people come from Holland and from Ludington to like learn the tricks of the trade that we know. But what I'm excited about is we're all, you know, really different and operating in different ways. The new food club in Holland is super tech forward. So we're really excited to see some of the things they're trying and see if we can maybe bring some of that on. So, you know, it's just, that's where like collaboration is like a really beautiful thing.
When you say tech forward, I'm not like they're scanning an inventory kind of tech forward.
Barcodes. So guys, we don't have barcodes. Like, let me just call it out. Like we're very like basic, you know, we built our own software and it certainly like works for us. But you know, June 30th at the end of the fiscal year, we're counting cans. I mean, it's, you know, so they though are very, and they have like a card system. We don't have a card system. We just have like a computer, you know, account kind of deal. So, and they've been doing retail reclamation. They're nonprofit for 40 years. So they've, you know, they did food work pre the food club. So it's, we've learned a lot. Like we just got a truck last year. So I called up Community Action House and was like, okay, how do you do this? And they walked us through it, you know, and that's where it's like, this is beautiful. Like this is, we're learning from each other, play to our strengths, because I am not tech forward and I'm a dinosaur. So, you know, but it's like really great to like have those, different partnerships in place. So.
Oh, I had a question as you were talking about that, and then it went right out of my head. Friends, we have a couple more minutes before we wind this up. So if there's any last questions that you want to make sure you ask or comments that you want to share in the chat, this is the perfect time to do that. Food waste truck. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So we're being at Plainsong Farm. We're in the north part of the county. And I was just looking at some, which is pretty heavily rural. I was just looking at, I think it was Voice Kent data from a few years back from before the pandemic. And one of the things that stood out to me was basically similar levels of lack of access to healthy food being reported in the north part of the county as in the 49507 zip code, which, you know, it's kind of heartbreaking in that there's, you know, there's plenty of land up in North Kent County, but that doesn't mean there's time. That doesn't mean there's skill. That doesn't mean there's priority. And also this is Michigan. You know, we are going to be using food stores and there aren't, you know, there's not as many opportunities to buy food up there, and transportation is always an issue. So I think, I mean, I'm not surprised to hear you say that you're seeing different, you know, similar things in Ludington as you are in the city of Grand Rapids. And I think it's, it's just very intriguing to me what is possible, what would be possible as more and more of this type of model spreads.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're looking into like, what would it look like to have other locations? You know, we're not there yet. Nobody spread that rumor. My board will get on me. But, you know, we have to meet people where they're at. And we're learning that division and hall is not necessarily the place everybody wants to go to get their food, right? So, this is a really big job, people. Like, it's just food security and food access is never going to be a one size fit all, and it's never, there's never one thing that works best for every person. So, I think as we move forward, we need to start thinking about like what are efficient, effective ways to get people good, healthy food, preferably grown locally, right? I mean, that's what we love about Plains Farm. But also understanding that we live in Michigan, so we got to kind of balance all that out, right?
Mhm.
But I think we just have to really keep listening and keep listening to the people. So if you walk away with like nothing else from this conversation, listener land, visual land, please know that like people who are food insecure are no different. We all put our pants on the same way, right? There's so much wisdom and beauty and cultural experiences that are happening with food, and we have to pay attention to the people who are living that. So that's like my own like personal journey is like, how do we get more voices around the table? How do we get the right voices around the table? Because I think for so long, like we started out this conversation, people have been told what to eat and how to eat it. You know what? Ain't nobody got time for that. Like we have got to do this differently. So whatever is the best fit for a community, let's do it. The time is now. So.
Wonderful. Well, we have one. This will be my last question. Do you get any government funding from the chat?
So very, very minimal. It's really only Kent County senior millage for right now. We do have our sight on some bigger federal grants, but we're working that out. So
sure. And I should say, from Plainsong Farm, we generally in this series, well, so far this is the second thing in our series, but in the first thing we said this was partly to connect the practice of Christian discipleship and food, health, equity, and resilience. And I should make clear, the Community Food Club is a non-religious organization, so there's no. It's a totally secular nonprofit, and I personally feel that that's part of my practice of Christian discipleship is being connected to people who may or may not practice my faith and serving them as also being God's creation. And so that's, I guess that's my faith statement for this experience. Thank you, everyone who has been part of our conversation. And AJ, I don't know if you have any last thoughts that you would like to share before we wind this up.
I just want to say thank you, Nuria, for this opportunity to come in and talk about our model and our partnership. Again, from day one, I think that we really just understood one another, and kind of the missions of our organizations are so much in alignment, right? It's just about being good neighbors and listening to folks and embracing all of the tenets of social justice, right, together. So thank you again. We're really excited for what's to come. And if you're in Kent County and you want to come and check us out, you'll have my contact information. Stop by for a tour, stop by to say hi, get to know us a little bit better.
Wonderful. Thank you. So before we go, I want to thank our audience. I saw so many names today in the chat. Some of you I knew, some of you I didn't know. That was just delightful. I want you to know we are not going to hold a Growing Connection series in January, because that month we're going to be focusing on the relaunch of Plainsong Farm's Good News Gardens Bible Study. And that's a study that helps Christians who are growing church gardens understand how justice, equity, and health for creation is in the Bible and not just in the soil that they're tending. So we piloted that curriculum this past year, and we're excited to bring it to the wider community with a new and better online platform in 2022, so that we can continue to grow a practice of Christianity that serves God's healing and God's justice. So we will be back in February with the next Growing Connections. And if you want to sign up to learn more about Plainsong Farm's work, to be part of the next Growing Connections, or to learn more about the Good News Gardens curriculum, just go over to our website. We're at plainsongfarm.com. You can sign up for our email newsletter there. It's all the way at the bottom of the front page. Or you're also welcome to become a supporting member using the donate link at the front page of our website and help keep this work going. Thank you again for joining us today. Thank you so much, AJ, for taking us on the tour and for stewarding this wonderful work that is happening there. Thank you for all for being part of the Growing Connections series. And especially thanks to the sponsors, the Episcopal Church's Becoming Beloved Community Initiative. So this live broadcast will be available recorded on the platform where you're now watching it. I encourage you to share it with others who are seeking equity and resilience, and particularly disciples of Jesus looking for God's healing for all creation. Thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you in days to come.